Today's guest is someone who knows how to own the stage, and she's doing it all while redefining what it means to live boldly, sober, and unapologetically. Margy Schaller is a speaker coach, author, and co-founder of Sober Life Rocks, a vibrant community for professionals who are choosing an alcohol-free lifestyle with decades of experience helping speakers craft impactful, unforgettable presentations. She brings not only strategy and expertise, but heart, humor, and a full lot of fun. So I am so excited to have you on the podcast today. And it sounds like you're a powerhouse, but I'm excited to bring you on the Samantha Parker Show because not only are you're a speaker coach, which I think is incredibly interesting, but you're sober. But what really, really inspires me is your whole sobriety journey is so much different from anyone else that I know. But we all have a unique one. But I think yours is like extra unique in the fact that you kept it private for over 18 years. Welcome to the Samantha Parker Show, where sober meets CEO energy. I'm Samantha, a social media manager, content strategist, and woman who said no more to playing small. This show is your permission slip to ditch the rules, show up loud, and build a life that feels damn good without alcohol, burnout, or the BS. I didn't build my business after getting sober. I built it while struggling quietly behind the scenes. But when I put down the drink, I picked up something way more powerful: clarity, confidence, and a whole new way to lead. Now this podcast is where I spill it all. The lifestyle, the business growth, the mindset shifts, plus the truth about what it really takes to stay sober, build a business, and show up unapologetically. If you're a big dreamer who wants more out of life and maybe less wine with it, you're in the right place. So grab your latte, your to-do list, or your running shoes. Let's get into it. So I would love to know what inspired you to make that shift and how has it impacted your life? Because obviously you were probably scared to talk about it.
I was. So first of all, thank you for having me here. I love the vibe of your podcast so much, like the Sober Buddy. I love that. And I think storytelling is a really important part of our journeys because we can feel so unique. Like nobody would understand me because they've never faced this before. So I think it's so important that we just tell each other stories. So I got sober 20 years ago in February. And, back then, Sam, the stigma was real. It was hardcore. That was not something you talked about in public. So I even remember got sober in AA. And I remember I would drive down to the local AA meeting and drive around to the back of the building. And then I'd wait until the cars were passing in front so that as I hooked around up front and up the stairs, people wouldn't be able to see me because they were busy driving. That's how much I wanted to keep it private.
Were you in a small town or just?
I was in a close-knit community. It was a suburb. So my kids were super busy with sports. And so I knew a lot of families and all of things. So, but I also was at the time working for corporations where my job was literally to develop and then bring on board speakers or consultants for our products. I worked for a medical device company, I worked for a diagnostic company, and then eventually a dental implant company. So I would have to go out to these conferences and wine and dine these thought leaders, these speakers, these influencers, and talk to them about our products and then hopefully have them come into contract with us. So I couldn't very well just go out and be like, oh, hey, I don't drink because I'm an alcoholic. That's just back then, that would have just not gone well at all.
That's so what did you do? Did you just pretend to drink?
It was so painful. I mean, being the host of some of those big dinners, the waiter comes over and hands you the wine menu, which is basically a directory of my best friends.
Right?
Right. And so I have to look at this thing and I'm just like, I'm not really sure I'm the best equipped to order. Does somebody else want to order? So I would do things like that. I learned really early on just to always have a glass of club soda and a lime, just so it looked like I was drinking something. But I got awkward questions, for sure.
Yeah.
And because I just was not well equipped to deal with those, it was so awkward. It was like, I'm just not drinking because I'm working tonight, or I just need to take it easy while I'm traveling, or I got to drive home, whatever the thing was. And so I just felt like I was always making excuses and always trying to mask this part of my life. And then at 10 years sober, I had the opportunity, I was launching my business as a speaker coach, and I had the opportunity to speak at a conference of speakers. And it was like, this was my big moment. I was going to get to show my stuff and launch this business and get all these clients. And what I always teach people who are speaking in front of an audience that they don't know is that it's really important to be authentic and share something meaningful about yourself that ties to your why. Why are you so passionate about what you do? Why do you believe what you believe? So that people can choose to align with you or not. And after much thought, I thought, I'm 10 years sober. This is part of my authentic self. And so I chose to open that talk with just a very brief version of growing up in an alcoholic household and having all the chaos and not learning the adulting skills that my mom was not equipped to be able to teach me. And I said in this talk, I said, I vowed I would never be like her because of all the chaos that we went through. And by my 20s, I was just like her. And I bumbled my way through my 20s and early 30s, just not, I didn't have the skills and I was drinking too much. But, and I said in this talk, 10 years ago, I made the life-changing decision to stop drinking. And since that time, I've had amazing people show up in my life. People who have finished helping raise me. People who taught me how to put on makeup, taught me how to dress professionally, taught me how to be a better mother, how to be a better friend, a wife, all the things that I didn't know. And I'm so grateful to those people. And I can never really repay them. Not that they're the sort of people who would want to be repaid anyhow, but I want so badly to do something for them. But the best that I can do is to help other people become the best version of themselves. And that's why I love being a speaker coach. And that's why I'm here to help you today become the best version of yourselves as a speaker. Now, in the moment, everybody's sitting on the edge of their seat, waiting to hear what I have to say next. And the rest of the talk went fantastically. In fact, I had people running up to me at the end, like waving their business cards at me saying, I want to hire you. I want to hire you, which was like my dream come true. And a couple of people quietly said, thank you for sharing that. Like I had a similar upbringing. But here's what happened, Sam, is two separate people who were very influential in that organization pulled me aside at separate times later that evening and said, good job, Margy. Really, that was great. But you might not want to talk about that sober thing.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And because that was my worst fear, I never spoke of it again publicly.
Which is interesting because that was just their opinion. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I own my part in that I was so frightened of that kind of reaction that one whiff of it was enough to like have me scurrying into the dark again.
Yeah.
But that's also the climate that things were like that back then. There still was that judgment. And quite frankly, I know who those people are, and I would never ever say who they are, but I know that they drink quite regularly. And I'm not going
to call you out, Billy.
I'm not going to judge how much they do or don't drink, but when somebody says I don't drink, it can be threatening. Mm-hmm. And it can cause all kinds of people to have all kinds of reactions. So anyhow, so that's the deal. Maybe there was 3 or 4 people in my professional life who knew I didn't drink after that. And that kind of brought us to 8.5 years ago. Do you want me to tell that story too, or?
Yes, I would love to. But real quick, I have noticed like from people, they kind of approach it really interestingly. They're like, oh, I've heard you're friends with Bill and Bob. And I'm always like, who the hell? Like it literally doesn't click in my head because some people are so private about it. But I just can't be,
That was code. And when we were in public places, I mean, my husband and I have done that frequently, where we'll hear somebody say a phrase that sounds very much like something you hear in AA, or we'll see somebody not drinking and we'll be like, hey, do you know Bill and Bob? And they're like, yes, we do. And then suddenly we're off and running because now we have something in common that we can enjoy each other's company and not worry about all the drinking going on. That's how it was back then, Sam. Like there was AA or there was nothing, and there was stigma or there was shame. I mean, there just wasn't an option.
Do you think social media is kind of bringing a light to it because people can see like on a bigger scale? that like
Yeah,
they're
I felt a lot about this, what happened. I think a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to give full credit to the celebrities who have come out and said, I've been through treatment and I'm sober, or I just choose no longer to drink. I think that has been the ultimate influencer, that they're brave enough to do that. I think the second thing that's happened was this time frame, this generation is a lot more interested in curiosity. And so things like dry January have become sort of a fun thing to do where people just like, I'm just going to not drink for a month and post this with curiosity. I wonder what that might be like. And then talk about it.
Yeah.
And then since then, I think, yes, social media has allowed people a platform to just be able to be like, yeah, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I don't do, in a way that just feels joyous and authentic. And it makes me so happy and so grateful that I get to see this transition going from secretive and shameful to curious and open and acknowledging. And when somebody chooses not to drink nowadays, it's just like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I still get sometimes the comments, not so much since I've been so public, but there are definitely people.
Yeah. I think some of my comments now are I have a lot of friends and family, like really close people to me that like still drink. And they're like, oh, this must be so ridiculous around us. And every time I'm like, well, that's not about you. Like, I'm just worried about myself, you know?
For sure. For
Okay,
sure.
so it only took me 8 months, which I felt like was forever. Like I disappeared for 8 months. I had like friends texting me. They're like, "Are you mad at me? Why won't you return our calls?" I remember one of my friends. I was like, I need to go to lunch and I have to tell you something." So, but it took me 8 weeks, is what it was. So 2 months, and that felt like a lifetime to me. So, please tell me your story. I guess we're on the eights. It's an 888 day, but you said
Yeah.
8 years ago. But so you were fighting for 18 years. That's so great. So what kind of pulled you out of that?
So Laura and I were at a women's entrepreneur conference. And
okay, yes, and we'll get to who Laura is in just a second for you guys listening.
Okay. So she was on a panel for mind body health. And if you know Laura, you know that's crazy because that's just not the sort of her personality. But she had chosen to get sober publicly on TikTok. And so because she was so open about it, the person running the panel wanted her to be on this panel to talk about how her sober choices had impacted her mind body health. Great. So she's answering some question, and there's about 125 women in this room, most of whom we knew each other, if not well, at least somewhat. And she's like, I'm just curious, how many people out there don't drink for whatever reason? And in this moment, I've got a decision to make. And she knew that I was sober because I had told her. She was one of the like 4 or 5 that did know. So I start slowly raising my hand and looking around the room with my side eye.
You're like, I'm going for it. I'm going for it.
Same, like 15% of the women in the room were doing the same thing. All of us just quietly raising our hands. And we're looking around at each other and we're like, how is this possible? We didn't know. And I looked at Laura and she looks at me and our eyes are huge. We're just like, what? It's crazy that all of us were secretly, quietly not drinking. And yet all the evening activities were all centered around the drinks.
Yeah.
So at that moment, she and I grabbed each other for lunch and we sat down and I said, this has got to change. This has got to stop. And it has to start with me. I can't put baby in the corner anymore.
I love that.
That's when we started Sober Life Rocks. And that's when I came out publicly. And I have been loud and proud and running my own podcast and on social media and all of the things ever since then. And here's what I want to say for anybody who has shared a story like mine. I literally felt my cells rearranging themselves over those first couple of months when I first started talking about it publicly. Like I came into this meshing of my two worlds in such a beautiful way and just felt more comfortable in my own skin, more comfortable showing up at things, more comfortable just being who I am. And some days that's a mess. And some days that's fantastic. And it really doesn't matter anymore because I have nothing left to hide. Like I just am who I am and that's what you're gonna get now.
I love that. And it for me, it felt like I was coming out of like the sober closet, as I call it. It felt like such a huge deal. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's out there. I can do this.
For sure. That's exactly what it felt like. Although I don't want to
Okay.
diminish anybody else's closets, but for me, that was a definite closet.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I came out of the sobriety closet.
Yeah.
Okay, so you and Laura co-founded Sober Life Rocks. Can you tell me about that? I know, it's a sober community, but give me like the spill because it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So because we both of us are in the professional space, Laura is a professional speaker. I'm a speaker coach. We go to conferences all the time. And what we really identified that day was you can choose whether or not you go to a friend's house, or you can choose whether you go to a tailgate party, or you can choose whether you go to a New Year's Eve party with your buddies that there's going to be drinking. But in your professional life, if your boss asks you to go to a company networking event, or if your team is going to happy hour after work, or if you're going to a conference where the networking is around the little black bars in those rooms, you can't not go.
Yeah.
And so who's championing those people?
It's a really great point because I have a really good friend who she talks about like the first time she was at a big conference and she was just freaking out, because it was like they just bring out the drinks and she's like, there's no alternative. So she was like locked in her room, pacing the floor on the phone with her sponsor.
That's right. I mean, the first times that I went to those conferences, exactly my experience was just petrified because there was no other options. And so our mission really is to bring that to light and to normalize sober choices in the professional world. And then also to work with meeting planners and hotel properties and convention centers and help them see like the small independent restaurants are starting to bring in mocktail menus.
They
But
are
these big conferences, they're
big.
not. These conferences have these big contracts locked down with the big distributors and they're not doing it. And it's really problematic.
See, that's wild to me because it's like just offer a second choice, bring in some bubbly.
Right?
Yep. Super easy.
Yeah. And now there are so many amazing non-alcoholic options, wines, beers, ready, pre-crafted cans of things that feel like mixed drinks, but they are alcohol free. It's so easy. It's so easy. But more than that, Sam, we believe that networking shouldn't only be done with a drink in your hand. What if there was fun ways to network where drinks were over there? That's an option, but the main point is the thing we're doing together.
Yes. I mean, that was like
games or fun like faux poker, or packing lunches for the homeless community in the town that you're in, or going out on a lunch walk, or who knows what the thing is, axe throwing. There's so many more ways to network where what you choose to eat or drink becomes irrelevant.
oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Utah, so I wouldn't say that like alcohol being at every event is maybe as prevalent as in other locations,
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I got sober, one of the things I used to always say, I'm like, well, if these Mormons can do it, what do they do all the time? I was like, oh my gosh, my people. I was like, maybe I can do it too.
Absolutely. And in fact, we were at some event and there was some people who are Mormon who they wanted to go out and do something fun. And so we all took off and went to the top of some tower in Chicago and like did this thing where we were in this glass cage that leans over the edge of the building. And it was a blast.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're laughing. My stomach is hurting. I'm laughing so hard. No alcohol during any of that. So it's not like you can't have fun. Quite the opposite. We had probably more fun and I remember more of it. And we built great like relationships with these people.
Yeah.
All
And
the
you
things
don't
that
like embarrassment the next day.
oh
That's my
God.
favorite. Is if I say
Oh
something
God.
stupid, I'm just like, oh, that was stupid, and you move on. You don't go through that shame and guilt cycle.
Oh, and man, I have to tell you, there was not good things that happened when I was in my worst of my drinking. Not
Okay.
good things.
Okay, so you guys have created Sober Life Rocks, and I want to hit on your upcoming event because I think it's really, really big and important. So let's Emma, let's throw that in right now. You guys have something big coming up in January, and it's tied to Podfest, which, if people don't understand, like Podfest is a really big deal. I know so many people that go to Podfest every year. So tell me about what you got going on with Podfest.
Yeah. First of all, about Podfest, it is amazing. It's like 2,000 people from all over the world, from all different types of topics, podcasting from who knows, rare coins all the way to current events. And so a couple of years ago, they started allowing industries to come in and have like an industry day within Podfest. So there's a Christian day, and there's a military day, and there's a dental day. And so Laura and I were like, we need to have something around Sober Day. However, there are really, really good meetups and retreats and stuff for people who are in sobriety. We felt like over the course of this past year and a half, we've talked to so many amazing people, me through my podcast, Laura through her book and speaking, and all of the ways that we're connecting with people. And because the sober movement is really just kind of taken off in this tidal wave the way it has since the pandemic, it's kind of fragmented. And so we want to bring together all of the leaders, if you will, in the sober movement for this one day called Amplify Sober Voices at Podfest. And so if people are a podcaster or a speaker or a writer or a social media influencer or a coach or whatever the thing is where you are building a community, then we want you to come together, because what I've learned is there's 6 or 7 people over here who they all know about each other. But then I say, do you know so-and-so? And they're like, oh, no, this person over here, they might know these 6 or 7 people. And I say, do you know this person over here? And they're like, no. So imagine what we could do if all of us got together, if all of us like connected. And in fact, our theme is we can do more together.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it because I've been like talking to you and, Laura back and forth and stuff. So it's been kind of fun and I'm excited. I'm going to be there for sure. What is the website? We'll make sure we have it in our show notes too for you guys listening.
AmplifySoberVoices.com.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. Yeah. Or you can find it through SoberLifeRocks.com as well. Yeah. But it's January 15th and it's in Orlando. So there's no place like Orlando in January. For me, that's coming from Seattle, like I can't wait to be in warm weather. It's amazing.
Oh, it is always so great to like go to, well, I was going to say California, but California is not quite warm enough, but like Florida will do it, or Mexico in the winter.
Just break up those cold months. Yep.
Okay, so I'm drinking my drug of choice now that I don't drink alcohol, is I went back to Diet Coke. So I've got my afternoon Diet Coke that I'm like sipping on while we're chatting. This is so funny, but I get so bored of water. Like, what do you go for?
Yep, I am all about the sparkling waters. So right now it is LaCroix guava, because these are 0 calories, 0 sweeteners, 0 all the things, and the flavors are so good.
I love LaCroix.
Yeah, LaCroix or Bubblies, or like there's so many brands out now, but for me, I can't do the fake sugars. So,
I hadn't had a Diet Coke for 5 years. And when I got sober, I was like at a restaurant one day and I was like, F this, dude, I'm having a damn Diet Coke, So I know I'll have to pare it back a little, but it's gotten me through this year.
Yeah. And I will say that up until this whole thing started with Sober Life Rocks, I never dabbled in the non-alcoholic beverage space. I didn't feel safe enough with myself. And I also had a lot of judgment about it. And I think the products back then were pretty awful. But since this time, I have started just trying out different things. And for me, it has been amazing, because the thing that was missing was I felt like I want an adult beverage.
Yeah.
When I want to celebrate, I want an adult beverage. When I've had a longer day, I want to like relax with an adult beverage. I just didn't want alcohol in it. And so today I'm finding that being able to have those as options from time to time make me feel less like I'm at the kiddie table.
That's how I feel. Like when we go out to a restaurant, I'm like, I don't want just a water. I want something.
Or just juice, just the sticky juices.
Yeah, I don't want to drink like juice or a full sugar soda, So
yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
We're back into our love affair.
And I will say for many people, like the NA options are not something that if you don't feel safe trying it, don't try it, because it can be triggering
That's
for
what I
some
was just
people.
going to ask you is because a lot of them, like I get a lot sent to me, which is so generous and so amazing. And some of them just taste like, a random drink. I'm like, oh, that was kind of fun, like flavored. It doesn't even remind me of alcohol at all. And I think that's kind of what some of them are going for. But
Yeah.
I've had brands where if I didn't know better, like
Yep.
I would think that that was legit, like Chardonnay, champagne. And I don't know, like I feel like I'm in a pretty good place with my sobriety, but I almost am like, I don't like that. I don't want it. Like it's a little
Yeah.
crazy.
And I think for me, certainly the first 5 years, I would have stayed away.
Yeah.
If the good brands had been available like they are now after 5 years, maybe I would have started dabbling in it then. But I mean, I was 19 years sober when I started dabbling in it. So I'm so far from those days that it's not triggering for me. But everybody has a different reaction. And so I don't think anybody should do anything that they're not comfortable with.
Yeah. And it can depend on the day too. Like you just have to check in with yourself. But
Mm-hmm.
they're a little sketchy.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no difference. I'm like, can we just drink some Martinelli's? Just drink our sparkling apple juice because I know that that's apple juice.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's been fun to try all of them. But I did a drink review not too long ago on my Instagram, and I said, don't drink this if the taste of alcohol, because this to me tastes exactly like Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Which was
Yeah.
one of my favorites.
For sure. Me too. Yeah.
So, as a speaker coach, how do you think that people can really start to tell their story in sobriety? Like, how can individuals like harness that power and get it out there? Like, what tips do you have for people who are really wanting to share it? Besides, they should definitely come in January. That should be number one.
Yes, absolutely. I think, I just talked yesterday on my podcast with a dental hygienist who she is sober and started integrating talking about sober choices into some of her talks because she said in dental hygiene and dentists, they're leaning over the chair all day long and this heavy head is causing all this neck pain. And oftentimes they come home from the end of the day just sore and exhausted, and the glass of wine is a self-medication or the scotch and bourbon or whatever the thing is. And so she was able to integrate it into her stories about how to take better care of yourself. And she specializes in ergonomics. And so it wasn't just fixing the ergonomics, but it's also maybe fixing what you're doing to yourself physically with your diet choices, with your drinking choices, with your exercise choices. So I think that for somebody who's looking to start being more open, part of it is how can you integrate it into what you're already doing in a way that showcases how your sober choices have improved things so much more.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the gateway. Then there's other people who they want to shout it from the mountaintop. They want to go do a TED Talk. They want to go do regular talks. In that case, I think it's no different than any other talk about a personal journey, which is that it's really important to balance true authenticity with not glamorizing the mess.
Really?
I think a lot of times when people tell their tragic story of fill in the blank, they're trying to maximize the juice out of how bad things were. And it's almost like icky at a certain point.
Yeah.
And so while I think it's important to be authentic and talk about the messes that we have been through, that's not the important part. The important part is what happened next.
What would you say for people who feel like, okay, I've gotten sober and it's like, now what? I think I'm at that point. Or I'm like, okay, I'm a year sober. I'm like, do we have to talk about this every day? Like, I'm kind of over myself.
Mm-hmm. So, part of the old school thinking was that you always had to keep your sobriety in front of you every single day, that whether it was going to AA meetings or reading literature or whatever the things were. And I remember at a certain point, somebody said, I didn't get sober just to stay in the problem. I got sober so that I could be free and live my life and do the things that I was meant to do in this world. And so I do think that when people reach that point of stability, then they get to have curiosity. Like what would bring us joy that we could never do before? What would be the things that we feel like we could make a difference in this world? Like the pain that we went through could matter somehow. And so for some people, that's not staying all the time with the old messaging in front of us on a daily basis. For some of it is starting a new career or starting a new hobby or suddenly getting in shape or whatever the things are. For other people, and this is where we have found a lot of people, they want to give back. They want to be part of this next generation, this next wave. And whether that's getting certified as a sober coach, or whether that is writing a memoir, or whether that is doing a podcast, but truly with that place of, I remember watching so and so, and they made a difference in my journey, and I want to do that for the next person coming along.
And for me, it's that I always tell people, I'm like, I'm really good at the 12th step. Which is like just sharing the message with other alcoholics. But for me, what I'm hoping is that more people can see, like, hey, she went through that. Here's how I'm feeling. Oh, no big deal. I can get sober because she did. And what I'm actually really, really feeling like passionate about is, to me, I always looked at like, it was a stigma I had in my head. Men were alcoholics and they were drinking out of a paper bag under a bridge, you know?
Mhm.
And I'm like, they were like the degenerates of society. Like that was the picture I had in my head. And so it's been really great to see online all of these women who look like me. But what I'm really, really hoping is that we can hit that younger generation as well, where they're like, dude, why would I want that in my life? You know, instead of it being a secreted, closeted, dirty secret, it's more of like, why would I want to do that?
And this is part of why I feel so strongly about having ways that people can have fun that isn't, the goal isn't getting smashed.
Mm-hmm.
Like my daughter, she's now in her mid 30s, but even back in her 20s, she's like, she loved to have that first drink, and she was a lightweight enough that she would have a little bit of a buzz, but she didn't like the feeling after that. But there was no other options. So she would have the second beer and then start feeling shitty and want to go home. So when I first started dabbling in some of these NA beverages, I told her about ones that I liked. I'm like, go try some of these. And she now buys those for her parties. So when she has friends over, they'll all start out with a glass of wine or a beer or whatever. And then she'll open up the NA stuff and they'll start drinking that. And they have just as much fun because they're not kind of going on the downhill side of alcohol, but they're still drinking something that feels adult. So I think that that's a way that the younger generation can really kind of embrace this new movement of just being aware of what it does to us and enjoying the good parts and then leaving the bad parts behind.
Yes, that's what I'm hoping for, is that more amplify these voices, more people can see, they're not alone. Because even if we look at, really alcoholism, it really affects your mental health. But even if you can look at like the mental health movement and how many people have gotten open about their mental health struggles, do you know how many people that's helped? Like, I bet that has saved so many people. I know it has me, where I'm like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, it's okay that I have these feelings. And there's also resources out there where I can not feel like this.
It's funny, I've been watching very closely TV shows over the decades. And there was a day when you never saw a same-sex couple holding hands. And now you see same-sex couples kissing on TV. And there was a day when the going to a therapist was either a joke show or it was somehow derogatory. And now regularly on TV shows, you're like, oh yeah, I go to therapy. Oh yeah, I go to therapy too. Like, it's no big deal. I'm looking forward to the day when that's the case for people who choose not to drink. Like, oh yeah, I choose not to drink, or I'm in recovery, and just have that be totally normalized. But we're not there yet.
You know what drives me crazy about TV shows is, except for the movie The Hangover, but in every other TV show, they're like blitz the night before. They're gone. And very rarely, like, they might depict a hangover with like sunglasses, but they're just like out and about the next day doing activities. And I'm like, the lies you tell. Like, just sure. You were getting IVs in the ER. The value you drank.
Yeah. I mean, I was one of those high functioning who, I was a single mom. I was working like 12 hours a day in a very high powered career. But only afterwards, looking back, did I realize how much of my life was in a complete fog. It's like I had, I don't know, mesh over my eyes that I just couldn't see, and just the heaviness of this wet blanket on me all the time, and like the brain fog that would come over me, and because I was just perpetually passing out at night.
Did you have a moment? I had this weird, I can remember exactly what I was doing. So it was because it was only like 3.5 months ago, but I was sitting at my desk doing something, and all of a sudden this like wave of clarity came over me. And I felt like, I was just say, I felt like the hand of God brushed my brain. Like that's what it felt. And all of a sudden I could think clearer. I could see things differently. And I feel like it was, I don't know, my brain had like repaired itself. I know that sounds wild. And it was a very like burst moment, which I'm sure it was a buildup, but that's when I noticed it. And I was like, oh, I have this problem because I was working through a work problem, you know? And they're not problems. They're just things where you're like, well, we have to figure out what we're doing with X, Y, and Z. And it was so clear. And I was like, is this how everyone else thinks?
I know. I don't know that I had a burning burst moment like that, but I do remember vividly when I was still drinking, sitting on my patio swing, wondering, this is going to sound really like conceited, but here's how I thought at the time. I was like, I'm a smart person, and I'm smarter than a lot of people that I run across. And I can't figure out how to do these certain things. Like, how do dumb people figure out how to do these things? But that's the way my brain works. But then after I got sober and the fog cleared, all of a sudden, yes, I was like, oh, it's not so complicated. And more to the point, when something is baffling to me, I just ask somebody else now, how do you do this?
Yeah. I'm like,
oh, so to me that was okay before.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, so this is going on. Maybe we could do X, Y. And it's just not a big deal either. Everything was such a big deal, you know?
Yes. All the time.
I was like, burn it all down. Burn it all down. We're starting over.
But I have to say, like, I did not get sober when I was ready to get sober. I got sober because my parents gifted me with an intervention. And so it took me a while to really kind of like own what was going on with me.
Yeah.
And once I made the decision that I was going to accept treatment, that I was going to go and do this thing, like I never drank again. But Sam, I craved all day for months. And especially at that, like leaving from work, going home when I would normally, that's when I would start to drink. My mouth would fill up with just all the craving, and I could envision that glass with the beaded water coming down the side of it and all of the things. And I know for some people, when they quit drinking, they've had enough. They're done. And so the obsession is lifted. For me, it was not that way at all. And it was probably 6 months of gradually getting better. But there was times when I was like, I just want to see the light at the end of this tunnel. And I look back at that now as a gift, because I never want to go through that again. And so moments when I have thought, I want a glass of wine too. And my immediate second thought is, nope. I never want to go through that again. That was horrible.
And well, in AA, they'll call it like playing the tape forward too, like where you're going to end up again. And I'm like, to me, I'm like, how embarrassing would it be to come back and be like, so I'm getting a 24-hour tip today. Like, I don't know, that to me would be like devastating, but I'm always so proud of this you do, who come back.
Which is so funny how hard we are on ourselves and how much grace we have for others.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, how cool that they like walked back in here. But to me, that's like a thought that keeps me like sober. I'm like, that would be mortifying.
Yeah.
And it's we were camping this weekend. I told my husband, I was like, it would be so nice just to be like buzzed right now. And he was like, oh, really? And I'm like, God, it would be so nice. But my problem is I would have that nice buzz and then I would be drunk, and we would just be right back.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And honestly, I look at those things today with curiosity. I wonder why I'm feeling that way. So if you think about that moment, what do you think that you were thinking about that because of?
Oh, because we were kind of having a hard conversation. And I'm like, this would be so much better with alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so today, getting through those hard conversations, I feel so proud of myself when I get to the other side of a hard conversation with my husband or with a coworker, because before I totally ran from those things.
Or I like to have the hard conversations, but I would just keep them going. Like the drama would just keep going, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was nice to be like, okay, well, let's try this instead over, oh, let's go for a walk and make some s'mores. You know?
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I walked around a lot of life with eggshells.
Yes.
And that to me has been a blessing, is not to have as many eggshells. There's still some, sure, but for the most part, it's like if I see something that isn't working for me, I can now either work through it on my own or have a conversation.
Yeah.
Who knew? Who would have thunk?
It's that. And it's a beautiful, beautiful gift. Okay. So just to wrap us up here, make sure everyone goes over to Sober Life Rocks on Instagram. You can find the conference information there. And then if people want to connect with you personally, where's the best place to do that?
Absolutely. Either LinkedIn, Facebook, either of those two. Yep.
Okay. I was like, your Instagram is there, but I was like, I don't think this is for Maine.
No.
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn and on Facebook are the two places that I regularly work. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So I'll tell me about the LinkedIn. You know what? Some people just vibe in different spaces. I go over to LinkedIn and I'm like, what is happening here?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like LinkedIn is where we have more professional conversations.
Yeah.
And it's a very interactive community of people who will share some challenge that they're having or some victory that they've had, and people can chime in with their own versions of their own stories. And it's been amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. So I know that we'll talk more about that because I was curious. I'm like, when I saw you guys filled out your intake form, because we're going to be doing some content for Sober Life Rocks, and you had LinkedIn on there, and I was like, what are they doing over there? So I'm kind of excited to see what you got going on.
Honestly, if anybody is into LinkedIn, if you go to search Sober Life Rocks community, we have the largest community in LinkedIn for sober professionals. And it's free to join. And it's just a place where people can talk about the things that we've just been talking about today. Like, oh my God, I just went to this conference and here's what just happened. Or, hey, anybody have any strategies for this? Or sharing a podcast that they just listened to that they want to share. So definitely join in there.
Sober Life Rocks. Where do you find your community?
You type in the words Sober Life Rocks community in the search bar because it's a group.
They have groups on LinkedIn?
They do.
Okay, look, I'm joining. Okay, I'm in.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time today, your wisdom, and just, your beautiful voice with the Samantha Parker Show.
Thank you for having me.